Please. This meeting of the Honourable Senate for Friday, November the 15th, 2024 is called to order. Before we begin the business of the day, one of our number, specifically Senator Fraser Binns, was recently elected to the Parliamentary Network on the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, which is a parliamentary platform which engages parliamentarians from over 140 countries. So congratulations, Senator Fraser Binns. And what can go so? And also just like to welcome back our clerk, Ms. Lowe, who had, so let me tell you where she was, huh? She was recently at the Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference in Australia, where she represented the Parliament along with the Speaker. She gave us a brief this morning at the Standing Orders Committee as to how well and useful she thought the engagement was, and in due course she will provide a report for us to read. Where is the next meeting being held? Barbados? No, you can't say that. So, Ms. Lowe, welcome back, and I'm absolutely sure that the experience that you gained will be of benefit to the Parliament. I also recognize Senator Hill and Senator Lambert Brown sitting in places that they don't usually occupy. And of course, specifically for Senator Brown, remember one day Busha is still a Busha, so there you go. So that's the preliminary comments that I make. Statements by ministers, announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate are the following: annual report and audited financial statements of the Factories Corporation of Jamaica Limited for the financial year 2016-2017. Annual report and audited financial statements of the Jamaica Mortgage Bank for the financial year 2022-2023. Annual report of the Jamaica Promotions Corporations for the financial year 2022-2023. Minister papers entitled Cabinet Agenda Issues numbered 79 through to 82 of 2024, dated June 3, June 10, June 17, and June 24, 2024. The Civil Service Establishment General Order 2024 and its resolution under the Civil Service Establishment Act. The Road Traffic License Duties Orders 2024 and its resolution under the Road Traffic Act. The Customs Tariff Revision Amendment Resolution 2024 under the Customs Act. And finally, the Jamaica Hansard Parliamentary Proceedings of the Honourable House of Representatives for the session 2017 to 2018, Volume 43, Number 2, dated September 12, 2017 to December 6, 2017. Thank you, Mr. President.
Bills brought from the Honourable House. I'm sorry.
Just a clarification, just a search for information. Is the equivalent of the answer for the Senate available? I noticed the House, and I was wondering if it's an act of discrimination against the lesser House, or it's just too much work for them. And secondly, President, if we could just get an update as to whether or not there's been a recent tabling of the Public Defender's annual report. I can't recall seeing one, and I was wondering if it's just misled.
I can ask the clerk to follow up that. And in relation to the first query that you put forward, I'll ask the clerk to respond to you. Madam Clerk?
We are only in receipt of what is laid on the table, but we can do a follow-up with the printer to get an update as to when the Hansard for the Senate will be ready, notwithstanding if there is anything specific that you require from the Hansard, we will be more than happy to facilitate and assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Senator Brown. Bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives. Petitions. Papers. Reports from committees. Notices of motions given orally.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the following motion. The Road Traffic License Duties Order 2024 Resolution. Whereas Section 18 of the Road Traffic Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Minister responsible for Finance may, after consultation with the Minister responsible for Transport, by order, revoke, increase, reduce, or alter any license duty specified in the third schedule. And whereas by virtue of Section 18.2 of the Act, an order made under Section 18.1 of the Act shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas, Mr. President, on the 15th day of October 2024, the Minister made the Road Traffic License Duties Order 2024, and whereas it is desirable that the Road Traffic License Duty Order 2024 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable Senate as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Road Traffic License Duties Order 2024 Resolution, and to the Road Traffic License Duties Order 2024 is hereby affirmed.
Thank you, Minister Hill. I had, just before I move on, I had given permission to Senator Gabriel Morris and Senator Sapphire Longmore to join online. I neglected to get the permission of the members of the Senate. Do I have your permission for them to join? Thank you very much. Welcome, Senator Morris and Longmore. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business. Minister Hill.
Mr. President, today it is our intention to continue the State of the Nation debate with contribution with privilege from you, Mr. President, that I would be pleased to be making a presentation today.
This is a continuation of the State of the Nation debate.
And I will be presenting, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Charles. Thank you, Senator Hill.
Mr. President, on October 3rd, 2024, the Andrew Holness administration implemented a reverse tax credit for all Jamaicans who earn under $3 million. The reverse tax credit means that for every registered taxpayer who earns under $3 million, the Jamaican government will provide a tax refund of $20,000 this fiscal year. I am very pleased, Mr. President, to be here and to say thank you to the Prime Minister for being gracious and kind enough to appoint me to this position. I take it as a great privilege, and I serve with honor and with humility, but with a great deal of help from many people. My family, my wife Tamara, my son Alexander, my daughter Alana, my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law, brothers and sisters, the people in my office, my staff, and look at who walks in. My boss, the permanent secretary. She tells me what to do and says, okay, I've reviewed your speech, you can go and speak. So, Mrs. Sansa Bennett Templar, my permanent secretary, very happy to have her. The chief technical director in my ministry, Mrs. Latoya Franklin Parkins. Did I get the right order? Mrs. Latoya Franklin. She was Franklin. So my staff who work with me in my office, Cadian, my technical assistant, my PR assistant, Miss Roxanne Lewis, they all are always working. People who have to take me from one meeting to the next. My very loyal driver, Jordan, who is always there, weekends, every day, and never complains. Jordan Zimenez, I thought his name was unusual, begins with an X, and I never forget it. So, but for all those people who really helped me, but also in the Parliament, Mr. President, as I come to this Busher position once in a while, I have to constantly be briefed. And Ms. Brandon, Mr. Cohn, and of course the clerk. Ms. Lowe, who's just come back from halfway around the world. Good to see her back. They all have been very helpful to me. My colleagues, who really are very supportive whenever I speak, and they give me advice, and sometimes they thump the table, and I appreciate that. All of you, all of you across from me that make sure that I'm sharp whenever I stand up, I appreciate your being here and like that you're over there. So, Mr. President, so, Mr. President, I think, yes, I have a little thing from the weather. You know what I mean? I didn't say this weather, I know. There are weathers all over the place. Mr. President, this $20,000 reverse tax credit, which was given recently, has proven to be a real fillip to people's spending ability. Their disposable cash has been increased, and it's cash. You go to it, you make your application, I'll tell you how many have done it, and it goes straight to your account. In other words, Mr. President, the action of a very efficient government. Hello? They'll soon come back. They'll soon come back. This cash tax benefit is expected to cost the government some $11.4 billion, Mr. President. As we, in the Andrew Holness administration, are very much aware that although we recently raised the payroll income tax threshold from the magical $1.5 million, iconic by now, figure we established in 2016 to 1.7 million Jamaican dollars, there are income earners, we're aware, Mr. President, above this new higher threshold that are feeling the adverse effect from the COVID-19 pandemic. They also felt the pressure of other cost of living increases due to the foreign-induced inflation caused primarily by the spike in oil prices and other commodities due to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Mr. President, they also feel the pressure because of the unusual and continuous weather events that we've had, a storm and lots of rain. So, Mr. President, this new measure is just the latest in a long line of caring humanitarian actions that prove without an iota of a doubt the deep and resounding measure of care that the Andrew Holness administration has for the Jamaican people, especially those who are the more vulnerable in our society. Mr. President, as I travel around the country and talk with and walk through communities, I get to hear what people are talking about, and the social media platforms amplify these discussions. Mr. President, there are those who would want to negate the considerable amount of support and assistance that the Andrew Holness administration has extended to so many Jamaicans in all walks of life. Those who seek to spread this particularly negative but specious narrative would want us to believe that nothing has been done by this government to help those who are needy and vulnerable among us. They sum it up this way, Mr. President. To them, they want to spread the narrative that nothing now go on, well, nothing go so. Mr. President, Mr. President, although I have been present when all of those many care packages have been approved and presented to the Jamaican public, I want to provide everyone with a ready reference so I'm going through this medium to put them on the record in Hansard, which is the official record of this noble Senate. Because we're human beings, Mr. President, we tend to forget easily. We remember for quite a long time when some wrong may have been done to us. But boy, do we forget very quickly when something good has been done to us. In fact, sometimes we don't even recognize it. So, given that I understand human beings, here goes, Mr. President. Senator Allen, those care packages between 2020 and 2022, when the world had to face, because you tend to forget. I bet you haven't forgot. You haven't remembered the set cash. Set cash. But you tend to want to forget it, so I have to remind you. And you go out there and spread bad rumors, so I have to tell you, President, Mr. President, what Senator Brown should be telling the people of Jamaica. The set cash, we gave 40,000 Jamaicans. We gave them $18,000 for 13 consecutive months. Mr. President, that added up to 7.9 billion Jamaican dollars, or 50.97 million US dollars. After set cash, we gave best cash. Senator Crawford, across 167 hotels, an attraction received 18,000 for 13 months. 15,000 people got it. 4.1 billion more dollars, 26.45 million US dollars. COVID-19, we gave grants as well, compassionate grants. 1.5 million per annum in the informal economy and not a payee, 390,000 beneficiaries, $3.9 billion, 25.6 million US that was equal to. 2021, Jamaicans impacted by closures due to COVID-19 received grants of 25,000 and 40,000. That was 19,086 people who got 662 million Jamaican dollars, 4.27 million US. The hotels, 85 hotels benefited. Small businesses received grants of 100,000. That was 1,718 businesses, $152 million, 7.1 million US dollars. COVID-19, more of it. We gave out 8,500 per payout to students at the primary and secondary school. 5,000 students, $5,000 to students at the early childhood level. In other words, at every sector of this society we went down to. Primary school, people who work in hotel, primary school, people who run businesses that had to close. And so among these school children, Mr. President, those were 203,500. We gave 1.8 billion Jamaican dollars, 11.61 million US dollars. Allocations were made to the Constituency Development Fund, to the Ministry of Local Government. That was 339 million Jamaican dollars. Productivity incentive granted through the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining to support farmers and fishermen, another $1 billion right out, 6.45 million US dollars. Persons aged 60 and over. So we start at the little school, basic school, and we go up to the people who are 60 years and over. Those were 48,769, 488 million. I bet you never remember that. I bet you never remember how many people we have made sure that they got cash to buy food, to live with. And you hear them talk about line up. Oh, you can't go scatter it. You must line up. You must line up. Sure. Workers' grant, Mr. President. Jamaicans earning less than 15,000 per week. People who work sometimes for us in our homes and do other stuff for us were paid 780,000 per year, or paid or 15,000 per week, or 700,000 per year. 42,708 of those persons got a total of $427 million, or 2.75 million US. NIS grant, pensioners again, going to people who we tend to forget after they've done so much work. But we, the Andrew Holness administration, don't forget anybody, especially at both ends, beginning end and the end, and of course all of you who earn good money in the middle. We made sure you got participated in the 1.7 million PAYE. Everybody gets a blessing under the Andrew Holness administration. So those pensioners, Mr. President, they got 427 million. Pensioners now 15,000 per month were granted 10,000 each through Ministry of Labor. 57,000 of those, they got $570 million, or 3.68 million US dollars. PATH grant. PATH beneficiaries received grants of 10,000 each through the MLSS, that's Ministry of Labor and Social Security. 130,000 Jamaicans of those. $1.3 billion, 8.39 million US dollars. Social pensioners grant. We find somebody, give them social pensions grant, 10,000 through, again, the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. 5,000 of those, 50 million Jamaican dollars. And so we kept going, Mr. President. We have right through. I'm going to make sure this is registered. It's in my notes, so it will be in the Hansard record. But we had 20,000 people. License fees were paid for approximately 5,000 contract carriage operators. That means all that fancy word that, I know Senator Binns will understand, but for ordinary people like me from St. Elizabeth, it means taxi drivers and those kinds of people. We had 20,000 of those. 20,000 of those, Senator Allen, and they got 125 million Jamaican dollars, or 81.81 million US dollars. Again, we cover everybody. So anytime, uno out there here say not now go on, make sure you get the numbers. I'm giving them to you so you have them. Okay? Wait, let me tell you how much at the end. I'm going to tell you how much at the end. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Care digital devices, we give digital devices. That was 329 million. Care food packages, 448 million. More care food packages, 200 million. Poor relief, $330 million. Farmers and fishermen, they got to $1 billion, 6.45 million US. So, Mr. President, as we look at the state of the nation and how we've carried the state of the nation to the stage, in those packages I just named, it was 26.35 billion Jamaican dollars. That amounted to 170.03 million US dollars. Mr. President, we didn't plan on spending that money. Nobody plans on a COVID-19 worldwide pandemic. You don't plan, but you know what? We never borrowed any money to pay for it. We never raised a penny of taxes. The Andrew Holness administration managed this economy sufficiently well, putting enough buffers to make sure we could handle this. To put this expenditure in perspective, Mr. President, the 26.354 billion Jamaican dollars unplanned to be spent is greater than the current, that is the 2024 budget for the Ministry of Local Government. It's bigger than that budget. They almost come up to it, but they didn't reach it, the spend. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, this spend was much bigger than that budget, bigger than the Ministry of Tourism budget, bigger than the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, bigger than most every budget, mine, culture, everybody's budget. The only ones that I know are bigger are national security, health, and of course, fisheries. Sorry, not fisheries, but education and youth. Education and youth is a huge budget. Mr. President, this very substantial expenditure by the Andrew Holness administration during the put here on the wrong side, she may have considered you. Mr. President, this very substantial expenditure by the Andrew Holness administration during the COVID-19 pandemic to help hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans manage through this most difficult period of economic, health, and social challenges is quite simply, Mr. President, an outstanding testimony to the caring and compassionate feeling the Andrew Holness administration constantly, not sometimes, constantly extends to so many Jamaicans in all walks of life across this country. Mr. President, all those numbers I have outlined for the Senate and our viewing public affect individual persons in this country. Those are not macro numbers. Me hear the talk, but oh, they love to talk about macro numbers. Well, all those numbers me give you, Senator Allen, when you go back to Montego Bay, are micro numbers, ordinary people that some of them you don't even know, but I know them. So some of them that you don't, no, because it's like he laughed. Some of them that you don't know get all these benefits, not the highfalutin friends of your senator friend beside you. Those are not macro numbers, Mr. President, that tell you about GDP and then unemployment and all those high-level figures. I have presented these figures, Mr. President, because these are the figures that represent the money that the Andrew Holness administration has delivered to individuals, hundreds of thousands of individual Jamaicans, Mr. President, to help them through the difficult times that came with the COVID-19 pandemics. So nobody tell me say not now gone. tax credit, which will provide a tax refund of $20,000, this fiscal year is eligible to 580,000 Jamaicans. In fact, Mr. President, it's not even this fiscal year, it's October. We put it in on October 3rd for people to get it. So after the July 3rd storm and the rains that we got, we went back and searched and looked and realized people having difficulties. We give them money, Mr. President, then they don't have to line up anywhere. Them just register, put them bank account in, and the money goes into the bank account. Efficient government on the rise, looking after 580,000 Jamaicans. About 74,750 Jamaicans who have already been successful in their application for this reverse tax credit. Another 197,292 applicants are expected to be paid in November. Money is going out in the economy. This benefit will provide needed financial assistance through this period of storms and continued rainy weather, and already hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans have applied and become eligible and are receiving these tax refund disbursements in their accounts. This is an administration that loves to give back people tax refunds and to make them better off, Senator Allen. I know you appreciate that. Mr. President, this is just another avenue that the Andrew Holness administration is using to extend cash assistance to hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans who have needed and appreciated their cash benefit from this government. So, Mr. President, when we look at how we have managed the economy to help ordinary Jamaicans, and it's just ordinary Jamaicans I've talked about, not my friends across the aisle, rich friends. Mr. President, where is Jamaica going? Jamaica is going for growth. Mr. President, the reason that we have been able to deliver that constant stream of cash benefits to millions of individual Jamaicans through care packages and reverse tax credits is due to the really excellent manner in which the Andrew Holness administration has managed Jamaica's economy in the past 8 years. No questions. Even fools have stopped questioning that statement of fact, Mr. President. No. Even them. We've covered them now, even them before, but now they're covered. They even stopped. So if you open your mouth, you know, so you're worse. The fiscal tools and management skill and grit that we have used to put Jamaica's fiscal house back in order after we inherited what we inherited, we won't bother go back there, is well recognized by honest thinking Jamaicans and many of our foreign friends, Mr. President. It is known at home and abroad that Jamaica's once extremely burdensome debt that existed when we took over the government of this country is now down to the 70% region and continues on the declining trajectory, which is the Andrew Holness administration's plan. The other macro numbers are good and are well known, but we must not get complacent, Mr. President, and fool ourselves that we can allow our macroeconomic indicators to ever again become so distressed as they were, and believe that this country will achieve economic growth and prosperity without good macroeconomic management. Mr. President, Jamaica must now pivot to and focus on achieving an increasingly strong and sustained economic growth. Mr. President, in the over 2.5 years since I've been leading the Ministry of Industry and Investment and Commerce, Jamaica's business ministry, I have made it my private and public business to encourage every business operator in this country to find new ways to create and produce new products and services to export to existing and new markets overseas. Mr. President, our trade balance numbers force the export imperative on all of us in this country. We don't have a choice. I give you just one example, Mr. President. In the 62 years of Jamaica's independence, we have had 61 years of negative trade balances. The last time Jamaica recorded a positive trade balance was in 1966. That long negative record is untenable, Mr. President, especially since the trade balance keeps widening as we continue to import a lot more than we export. Jamaica has no choice but to export exponentially more, much more, a great deal more than we currently sell to buyers overseas. I have made the case on numerous occasions here in Jamaica and in the diaspora markets, Mr. President, that with just under 3 million people with a relatively low per capita GDP of under $7,000 US, we will not become a very wealthy country selling to only this relatively small population. We must create new products and services to sell in rich markets and buyers overseas. We have to, Mr. President, make sure that we understand that export is an important part of our becoming a rich country. The demand, and you know, I just don't talk it, I live it. I've taken 7, 8 business missions overseas, well over 100 different companies, maybe 150 or so different owners and runners of business, chief executive officers, and we have found new markets. In fact, one of the persons who returned with me to London last week, when he went with us to London last September, he developed a partnership in London, and he has an IT company, and they are now looking to supply a service, not just to the Dubai tourism ministry, but right here in Jamaica to many others as well. We see many of those happening. A lady, when we went on my first mission to Guyana, by the time in late 2022, by the time I went back in early 2023, she had already established a partnership in Guyana. Her vans were wrapped with her brand, and Home Choice is the name. Home Choice, Miss Muncie, has been able to make sure that she establishes her business here. We cannot stay in Jamaica and get export business. Business people and government officials must go and look and find markets if we're going to get out of this place where we have a per capita GDP of only $7,000. So, Senator Brown, the demand for Jamaican orchard crops, ackee, breadfruit, avocado, mangoes in the diaspora markets is very large and very unmet. This means that Jamaica has a supply problem, not a demand problem. We must therefore find investors locally, regionally, and internationally to develop farms that very likely might follow a mother farm concept, where a big farmer sets up an agro-processing facility to which many small farmers will sell the required farm produce, like Senator Crawford. He knows how this works very well. He sells whatever he sells, but he has deep pockets that allows him to help the smaller farmers to grow their stuff. And a big brain. He knows where to find money. He knows where to find money. Other areas of growth, Mr. President. Other areas of growth, Mr. President, will include
Mr. President, Speaker's time has expired, but given the latitude and the width of which he has to play, may his time be extended indefinitely to allow him to conclude his speech.
Members should have heard the question. Those in favor? Against?
Mr. President, I rarely see such graciousness, and I really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
It's because of
So, Mr. President, other growth areas will include turning Jamaica into the logistics hub of the Caribbean as we focus on special economic zones. The government of Jamaica may just have to spend important sums of money on infrastructure to de-risk the first special economic zone to entice the first logistic hub investors to the SEZ. I see Professor Gordon Shirley, working out of the Prime Minister's office, has made in recent past the announcement that they are in fact going to de-risk and invest in the Cayman Special Economic Zone so it can become more attractive. And I say that because of my experience in traveling. I see what, I remember going to Mexico and looking at what they've done in Monterrey. They have 470 industrial parks, Mr. President. And they're in the process of building another 72. Well, you have VW, you have BMW, you have all those firms in their industrial parks because they're feeding into the US markets. But the Mexican government had to de-risk those industrial parks. Trinidad has just built one using Chinese contractor BECG to build it, and they have de-risked that by the government funding it. That's the way 25 years ago, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid of Dubai started the Dubai Free Zone. We'll probably have to go down that road and de-risk it ourselves. Another growth sector will be to increase our financial services products such as segregated accounts and general and limited partnerships under the recently amended Jamaica International Financial Services Authority legislation to attract, and we did that just about 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, high-level financial services clients to Jamaica, because we find Jamaicans working in Cayman, in the British Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos, lawyers, accountants, other ancillary people, that once we change that law here and put in the legal and physical infrastructure as necessary, we will have that service area to go, because, Mr. President, as I said, we have 3 million people thereabouts. We're never going to be a manufacturing powerhouse like China or even Colombia with 50 million people or Mexico with 120 million people. So it has to be brain power that we use, and that means that we have to go down the road of making sure when you have brain power, you have services for them to supply. Similarly, Mr. President, we must expand our knowledge processing outsourcing business to move up the value chain, moving up the knowledge and skills hierarchy, and Minister Dana Dixon used to be in charge of that. I think it might still be with her. I know Hart is with her. Moving up the knowledge and skills hierarchy and up the value chain to attract higher salaries for well-trained Jamaicans is vital, because, again, our small population will militate against us becoming a major production area for manufactured goods. That's at least in the near term. I know a country like Liechtenstein has serious, and Switzerland, small populations, but very highly educated people, and therefore produce very high per capita GDP. It will take us time to get there. In the meantime, we must use services to get to that level, because today, Cayman, as far as I know, doesn't manufacture very much. Their per capita GDP, Mr. President, is $96,000 US. The per capita GDP of Bermuda is $120,000. They supply very high-level, expensive financial services, something that they use a lot of Jamaicans to do, something that we must do right here in Jamaica. This reality, yes, Mr. BIT, good to hear you around here. We want to have very good jobs for Jamaicans. This reality, therefore, necessitates us as Jamaicans using a higher level of knowledge to provide services that our neighbors and other persons in markets farther afield will want to buy. The Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, will be giving the nation his view as to how he expects the broader growth agenda is to be deployed, rather developed and deployed and executed. The simple truth is, Mr. President, Jamaica has no alternative but to go much higher, for much higher economic growth, and much greater and exponential exports will have to form the main path to that growth and prosperity destination. Every single one of us in here. And, you know, when we had the debt crisis, Mr. President, remember what we did? We raised it, we elevated it to national status. We have everybody, every radio station was talking about the debt crisis. Well, we have an export deficient crisis. We have had a negative trade balance for 61 of 62 years. That's a talking point, but it's more than that. Everybody who does any business or any kind of business must say, how do I export what I make to make sure we can get hard currency and provide jobs for higher paying jobs for Jamaicans. Mr. President, I want to take the last portion of the time given to me by Senator Brown to talk. No, I'm not. Don't worry. It's the last portion. The portion is quite not small.
That's a course of feeling.
And what I want to talk about, Mr. President, is the business of conscience, judgment, and leadership. Mr. President, I have sat often in this chamber and listened to members from across the aisle make repeated calls for us on this side to practice an outstandingly high level of perceived integrity. Mr. President, those calls are repeated ad nauseum and often are out of context with the very subject on the order paper that is being discussed in this chamber. I hear the same noises from other places and from other various PNP platforms with more mentions of required perceived integrity. Mr. President, many of these boisterous calls are often accompanied by the shrill demands for some of us to step aside until their various and unsubstantiated allegations are investigated. What temerity they possess, Mr. President. Mr. President, this constant call and sometimes the drum roll for the JLP to practice perceived integrity and even for some of us to step aside forced me to go back and look at the record of the PNP. So, Mr. President, in this 27-year period until February 2016, when party leader Andrew Holness led the JLP to election victory and earned the right to govern this country, the PNP had been in power for 23 of those 27 years. Mr. President, they had a very extensive time in power to create a long and colorful record. I looked at the records, and this that I'm going to tell you is what I found in terms of scandals, very questionable integrity, lack of accountability of perpetrators of much more than allegations, and certainly no stepping aside of those who were believable to be or maybe clearly culpable. Mr. President, the following disclosures are in no way to even faintly suggest that because they have gotten away with so many scandals over many decades, our noble party should get away with even a little. That's not what this is about at all. That is not at all the intention of this exercise. It is simply to remind those who indulge in rampant and shameful hypocrisy what are the facts about themselves they are forgetting or trying to cover up. In any event, Mr. President, we on this side, we know that, invariably, unfairly, many would say, we of the JLP are held to a higher standard. Mr. President, in the PNP's hypocrisy and self-righteousness, is it causing them to forget so badly? I'll go down a shortened list of the scandals that should remind people that human beings are not perfect, and those who scream a lot maybe should be the most quiet. The Iran sugar deal scandal, the Shell waiver scandal, the zinc scandal, the furniture scandal, motor vehicle importation scandal, the foreign exchange scandal, water commission scandal of Operation Pride scandal, Montego Bay Street people scandal that affected St. Elizabeth, where I'm from, Fat Cat salary scandal, the NetServe scandal, Mr. President. We all remember that the net reserve scandal was dismissed with a proverbial wave of the hand. Oh, youthful exuberance. There was no stepping aside for that kind of exuberance, Mr. President, and yet with hypocrisy, they call for stepping aside over here. Mr. President, that scandalous is a charitable word. Mr. President, that remark by a former Prime Minister and leader of the PNP has become a euphemism in our language and culture for simply corruption. Mr. President, what you have just heard may sound like the hit list of a very aggressive, dangerous, and rapacious mafia enterprise, but there's more. NSWMA scandal, the White House scandal, the Trafigura scandal, Mr. President, all of these PNP scandals are terrible, but this Trafigura scandal is particularly egregious and offensively smelly because, Mr. President, what they tried to do is to ensure that the Jamaican people wouldn't hear in an open court what the PNP was trying to do to get the money and hide it. Mr. President, I am running for nothing. I'm so happy. I stand here looking for nothing, so I can call barefaced hypocrisy what it is when I see it. Right across the road. I can call it for what it is when I see it. And I love when you come to the Senate. No, man, no. This is the truth. This is the truth. Mr. President, as they have the gall to speak to us about transparency, integrity, and corruption. Now, if I wasn't a gentleman from St. Elizabeth, I would call them hypocrites. But while I don't, other people are calling them hypocrites. You shouldn't be behaving like that, Mr. President. Rather, it's a reminder of the excellent advice and counsel of our Lord Jesus Christ, President Senator Brown. Our Lord Jesus Christ, who said to all of us, that side and this side, including the PNP and their friends, to be careful to take the log and beam out of their own eyes before they dare to criticize a speck of dust in the eyes of their neighbors, us, on this side. There are these others. Those are this on that side, Mr. President. You have the bad gas scandal. You have the dead baby scandal. You have the church money. Speaking of St. Peter, the church money scandal. This Kingdom build wall around the National Heroes Park scandal. The FinSac scandal, Mr. President. This one, the FinSac scandal really hurts because some people, and you remember out of many? And you were, no, you were there. My colleague was absent from that board meeting. And when he came back, he objected. But the so, Mr. President, the FinSac scandal was terrible because many people died because of that scandal. And when you look at all those things, Mr. President, and they dare to talk about you must practice integrity, and that's where we're here. But then, Mr. President, let's say that's in the past. I put it on the record so anybody who wants to check it can check it in the handset. Look at the present. Mr. President, I was passing a television set on the date of the recent conference of the PNP. And me look upon the platform, and Senator Crawford, me look upon the platform, and me peep, me go up to the television and squeeze up and look. And me say, what that? Mr. President, Senator Allen, I looked till I tired, I couldn't find one drop of integrity. Not a drop of integrity there on the platform. What I did see were convicted criminals who later on, I understand, are now being proposed to be members of parliament. In other words, criminals convicted and not, Mr. President, let me put up my Jamaica socks. Mr. President, is them not convicted for shoplifting, or an egregious traffic offense, convicted for getting involved, processing and doing criminal stuff with Schedule 1 drugs.
What? No wonder nobody comes on the district. How you not talking about it?
No, they've done already, man. No. Ministry covered because when you see this, I am saying to Jamaicans, and I'm saying, in fact, I'm sorry, the two leading senators aren't here today because Mr. President, I withdraw that comment. I mean, Mr. President, I certainly withdraw that comment. I mean the leader, the normal leader of the Senate, and the venerable, a woman who I have very high respect and liking for. I wanted to ask them, don't you speak, I mean, you stand over there and tell us every week about integrity and transparency and how we should do this and who must step aside. And, call your leader aside, Marky British or Marky G, whichever one you call him, and say, look, you can't put convicted criminal in this country and another country, one of our best neighbors, to go put up as MP to make laws. Are we wrong with it? So all the Jamaicans must say this is unacceptable. So when I do that, Mr. President, I look at my leader. I look at Dr. the Most Honourable, Andrew Holness. Look at how he has led this country for the past 8 years. Look at what he's done in terms of looking at poverty, staring it in his face, and said to him, Finance Minister, We can't keep borrowing. We must find a way to make sure that we... No, please, that's over, man. Well, I was there. You know, for Dr. Phillips, let me tell you, I have already, and you know that, I stand up here and I give him credit. Because when he come back from Washington with the bitter medicine, let's say the cabinet table, long from Yasa to down, so Andrew Warner, no one never listen. Him go collect it, and when poor Dr. Phillips come back, all the PNP people then run down to the bottom. Him one up here, so him have to carry the bitter medicine by himself. And then we came in right afterwards, and boy, did we handle it. Did we ever handle it? Did we ever handle it? Debt dropped from 135 or thereabouts, that we take it from now to 70. And lots of people, including the productive input relief that we in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce give to business people who are manufacturing, then bringing anything that they use for manufacturing equipment, no duty. So what we're looking at, we are looking at, Mr. President, we are looking at, yeah, sure. It's, let us, Senator Brown was charged. Senator Brown was charged but not convicted, so we leave that alone. Okay. So, Mr. President, when you look at our leader, my leader compared to theirs, the kind of judgment that he's making, the kind of people he has around him, look at Andrew Holness and the people who he chooses. Look at his cabinet. Look at the people, look at how he's run this country. And you look at the great aspiration that you have over here. What we have over here, so